What if the man you loved drugged you to erase your unborn child? What if that child survived? No, four of them did. And 21 months later, you walked back into his empire. With four strollers and a smile that has said, Betrayal, your turn to break. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about survival, justice, and a woman who turned pain into power. Because when the system failed her, she didn't crumble. She built her own. Stay until the end. You'll want to see how she makes them pay. If this story hits your heart, comment your thoughts. Share it with someone who needs courage today. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind you, silence is never the end. It's just the pause before the comeback. The crystal chandeliers of the Morrison Pharmaceuticals ballroom cast golden light across hundreds of faces. Champagne glasses caught the glow like tiny stars. David Morrison stood at the podium, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his Tom Ford suit fitting like it was painted on. He smiled that practiced smile, the one that had charmed investors and board members for years. This year, Morrison Pharma achieved record profits, he said, voice carrying across the room with rehearsed confidence. We've expanded into 12 new markets, launched 3 breakthrough medications, and our stock price has increased by 42%. Applause rippled through the crowd. Board members nodded approvingly. David's smile widened. The double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. A woman walked in. White power suit, auburn hair pulled back in a sleek bob, heels clicking against marble with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Behind her, 4 nannies pushed 4 identical silver strollers. David's face went white. Someone near the front dropped their glass. It shattered, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Claire Morrison walked down the center aisle. She didn't rush. Every step was deliberate, measured, powerful. The crowd parted like water. She reached the podium and stopped, looking up at the man who had once been her husband. "Hello, David," she said, her voice calm and cold. "Miss me?" David's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hands gripped the podium edges so hard his knuckles turned white. "Claire," he finally managed. "Where have you been? We filed a missing person report. We thought you were dead," Claire finished. "Gone? Erased?" She smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. "Try again." She turned to face the board members sitting at the head table. Jessica Crane sat there too, blonde hair perfect, designer dress clinging to her frame. Jessica's icy blue eyes went wide with something that looked like fear. "Gentlemen, ladies," Claire said, projecting her voice across the room, "I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but I thought you should meet the Morrison heirs before we discuss my reinstatement to the board." The 4 nannies wheeled the strollers forward. 4 toddlers sat in matching outfits, big eyes blinking in the bright lights. Hope reached for Claire. Grace clutched a stuffed bear. Luke and Noah looked around with curious expressions. A board member stood up, confusion written across his face. "Mrs. Morrison, we were told you'd lost the pregnancy, that you had a breakdown and disappeared." Claire's smile didn't waver. "That's what he told you." She gestured toward David. "That's what he tried to make happen. But here's what actually occurred." She nodded. A man in a crisp suit stepped forward from the crowd, carrying a leather briefcase. He was distinguished looking, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Marcus Reed, senior partner at Reed & Associates." 21 months ago, Claire said, her voice steady and clear, "my husband and his mistress drugged me with an abortion pill without my consent." Gasps echoed through the room. Murmurs rose like a wave. Someone whispered, "That's impossible." "The abortion failed," Claire continued, speaking over the noise. "I was carrying quadruplets. 4 babies. All survived." She looked down at the children, then back at the board. 9 months later, I gave birth. They're now 1 year old. DNA tests proved David Morrison is the biological father. She dropped a manila folder on the podium with a slap. Papers spilled out, medical reports, and lab results clearly visible. "But we're not here about custody," Claire said. "We're here about corporate fraud, embezzlement, and stolen intellectual property." Marcus stepped forward, opening his briefcase. Marcus Reed and Associates. I represent Mrs. Morrison and the Bennett estate. We're prepared to present evidence that David Morrison forged documents to steal his late father-in-law's 40% equity stake in this company. Additionally, we have proof of $12 million in embezzled funds and SEC violations. The room erupted. Board members stood up, shouting questions. David gripped the microphone, trying to speak over the chaos. This is insane, he said, his voice cracking. Security, remove her. Claire turned to him, and her green eyes were ice. You can try, but NBC, CBS, and the Wall Street Journal are all outside. I gave them advance copies of everything. She checked her watch. This goes public in 3 minutes, so you can remove me or you can listen. The board chairman stood, raising his hands for silence. Everyone sit down. He looked at Claire, then at David, then back at Claire. Mrs. Morrison, present your case. David sank into a chair on the stage, his face gray. Jessica tried to slip toward a side exit, but a security guard blocked her path. Claire saw it all and smiled, but that smile held no joy. It held 21 months of pain, of fear, of sleeping in motels and dyeing her hair and running from the man who was supposed to love her. It held the memory of 4 tiny heartbeats on an ultrasound screen, proof that what David tried to destroy had survived. Let me start, Claire said, at the beginning. 21 months earlier, on their 7th wedding anniversary, Claire Morrison had worn an emerald gown that matched her eyes. She'd laughed with guests, poured champagne, played the perfect wife. The Morrison estate in Winnetka glowed with soft lights and expensive flowers. 200 people celebrated their supposedly perfect marriage. Maya Torres had hugged her in the foyer as guests were leaving. You and David are relationship goals, Maya said, her dark curly hair falling over her shoulders. Seriously, Claire, 7 years and you still look at him like you're newlyweds. Claire had smiled, tired but happy. We're lucky. If only she'd known how wrong she was. Claire excused herself from the last guests and climbed the curved staircase to the master bedroom. Her feet hurt from the heels, and champagne buzzed pleasantly in her head. She pushed open the bedroom door, already reaching for the zipper of her gown. Then she froze. David and Jessica Crane stood by the bed. Jessica's lipstick was smeared across her face. David's white shirt was untucked, his tie loose. They weren't touching anymore, but the evidence was everywhere. The rumpled bed, Jessica's shoes kicked off near the dresser, the smell of perfume that wasn't Claire's. Jess? Claire's voice came out small, confused. Jessica turned and there was no guilt in her icy blue eyes, just cold satisfaction. Surprise. David ran his hands through his hair, his face flushing. Claire, this isn't what it looks like. We were just talking and the champagne and things got out of hand. Get out, Claire said. Relax, Claire. Jessica adjusted her dress with slow, deliberate movements. It's not like you didn't know he was bored. You've been so distracted lately, so focused on work and your little plans. Claire's hands shook. She clenched them into fists. We're best friends. We have been best friends since college, since Northwestern, Jess, since we were 18 years old. Were, Jessica said, emphasizing the past tense. And honestly, he's always been more mine than yours. The words hit like a physical blow. Claire looked at David, waiting for him to deny it, to defend their marriage, to say something. He didn't meet her eyes. I want you both out of my house, Claire said, her voice shaking. Jessica picked up her clutch purse and walked toward the door. As she passed Claire, she posed and smiled. Your house? Check the deed, sweetheart. The door closed behind her. David stood in the center of the room, looking everywhere except at his wife. I should sleep in the guest room tonight, he said finally. We'll talk in the morning. He left. Claire stood alone in the bedroom that suddenly felt like a stranger's room. She sank onto the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. They were still shaking. In her purse, tucked into a side pocket, was a small envelope. She'd picked it up from the doctor's office that afternoon. The timing was supposed to be perfect. Their anniversary, 7 years of marriage. Finally the news they'd been hoping for. She pulled out the envelope and opened it. The ultrasound photo was grainy, black and white, barely comprehensible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. But Claire saw it clearly. A tiny shape, barely visible, 6 weeks along. She pressed her hand to her stomach. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the life growing inside her. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Morning came too quickly. Claire had barely slept. She changed out of the gown into jeans and a sweater, packed a bag with essentials, and sat in the bedroom watching the sun rise through the window. David appeared in the doorway at 7, coffee in hand. He'd showered and changed into casual clothes. He looked tired but composed. Always composed. That was David's superpower, the ability to stay calm no matter what. "We need to talk about last night rationally," he said, closing the door behind him. "Rationally?" Claire stood up, grabbing her packed bag. "You slept with my best friend in our bed. It was a mistake, a drunken, meaningless mistake." He set down his coffee cup. "I'll fire Jessica. We'll go to therapy. We'll fix this." Claire pulled the ultrasound photo from her pocket and held it up. "I'm pregnant." The change in David's face was instant. The careful composure cracked. His eyes went from the photo to Claire's face, calculating, analyzing. Not happy, not excited, just calculating. "How far along?" he asked. "6 weeks. I found out yesterday. I was going to surprise you last night." David sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the same bed where he'd betrayed her. "Jesus, Claire." "I know the timing is awful," Claire said, hope flickering despite everything. "But maybe this is what we need? A fresh start? We've talked about having children. We've tried for 2 years, and now we can't have a baby right now." The words dropped like stones. Claire stared at him. "What?" "The IPO is in 3 months," David said, his voice flat and businesslike. "Investors are already nervous about market conditions. If they find out about Jessica, if there's any hint of scandal, if my personal life looks unstable." He looked up at her. "And Claire, honestly, you're not stable enough to be a mother right now." "Not stable?" Anger surged through her chest. "I built this company's entire marketing strategy. I launched the brand that made Morrison Pharma a household name. I worked 80-hour weeks for years to—" "You had a breakdown last year," David interrupted. "You were in therapy for 6 months. You were hospitalized for 3 days. "My father died," Claire said, her voice breaking. "Dr. Richard Bennett died of a heart attack, and I grieved. That's not a breakdown, David. That's called being human. And now you're accidentally pregnant right when our marriage is falling apart?" He stood up, crossing his arms. "It looks desperate. It looks like you're trying to trap me." The accusation hung in the air between them. Claire felt something inside her crack, some final piece of trust or love or hope. She looked at the man she'd married 7 years ago, the man she'd built a life with, and saw a stranger. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "We need to discuss this," David said. "Let me make some calls. We'll figure this out together." But his tone made it clear. They wouldn't figure it out together. He'd already decided what would happen. Claire could see it in his eyes, in the set of his shoulders, in the way he looked at her stomach like it was a problem to be solved rather than a life to be celebrated. She walked past him toward the door. "Claire," he called after her, "don't do anything stupid. Let's talk tonight. I'll call Dr. Mitchell. He can help us understand our options." Our options, as if this were a business decision, as if their child were a liability on a balance sheet. Claire walked down the stairs, out the front door, and to her car. She drove aimlessly for an hour, tears streaming down her face before pulling into a coffee shop parking lot and calling the only person she could think of. "Dr. Hayes?" she said when the phone picked up. "This is Claire Morrison. I was at your clinic yesterday. I need help." Claire returned to the Morrison estate that evening because she had nowhere else to go. Her credit cards were linked to David's accounts. Her car was registered in his name. Even her phone plan was under his business account. She'd spent 7 years building his company, his brand, his success, and somehow along the way she'd given up every piece of independence. The house was dark when she pulled into the driveway. She'd spent the day at a library, researching tenant rights and divorce law on their public computers. Her phone had buzzed constantly with calls and texts from David. She'd ignored them all. Inside, lights blazed in the kitchen. David sat at the marble island with 3 men: Mr. Sullivan, David's personal lawyer, Dr. Mitchell, the company physician, and a man Claire didn't recognize, young and slick in an expensive suit. "Claire," David said, standing. "Thank God, we've been worried sick." "Who are these people?" Claire looked at the paperwork spread across the counter. Forms, documents, something that looked like a contract. "Dr. Mitchell has brought the medication," David said. His voice was gentle, reasonable. The voice he used in board meetings when he wanted to sound compassionate. "It's simple, safe, and private. You take a pill, and within 48 hours, this whole situation is resolved." Claire's stomach dropped. "I'm not doing this." Mr. Sullivan cleared his throat. "Mrs. Morrison, if you refuse, your husband is prepared to file for divorce and seek a psychiatric evaluation. Given your documented mental health history and the grief counseling you underwent last year, that's blackmail." "It's practicality," David said. He slid papers across the counter toward her. "Sign the consent form, take the medication, and we'll work this out. Or don't, and I'll make sure everyone knows you tried to trap me with a pregnancy. Your mother already agrees you're not in the right state of mind for this." "You called my mother?" "She's concerned about you, Claire. We all are." Dr. Mitchell stood up, holding a small pill bottle and a glass of red wine. "Ms. Morrison, the decision is ultimately yours, but I think you should consider what's best for everyone involved." "No," Claire said again. "I'm not signing anything. I'm keeping this baby." "It's not a baby yet," David said, his voice hardening. "It's 6 weeks. It's a cluster of cells. And you're not thinking clearly." The young man in the expensive suit finally spoke. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm William Carter from Blake & Associates. Your husband has asked us to prepare divorce papers. If you refuse this procedure, he's prepared to argue that you're mentally unfit. He has medical power of attorney if you're deemed unable to make decisions for yourself." The room spun. Claire grabbed the edge of the counter. "You can't do that." "I can," David said, "and I will. For your own good, Claire. You're not stable right now. Anyone can see that. You're emotional, you're irrational, and you're making decisions based on grief and anger." Claire pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She dialed her mother's number. It rang twice. "Mom," Claire said when it picked up, "David is trying to make me—" "Claire, honey." Her mother's voice came through tired and sad. "Maybe he's right. You're not in a good place. After your father died, you were so fragile. You couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. You scared me. I'm fine now. Don't ruin David's career because you're emotional. Have the procedure. Heal. Try again later when you're both ready." A pause. "I love you, sweetheart, but you need to be realistic." The line went dead. Claire stared at the phone in her hand. "Your cards are frozen," David said quietly. "I called the bank this morning. Your car is registered in my name. Your phone plan, your health insurance, everything runs through Morrison Pharma." He leaned forward. "Where exactly do you think you're going?" The kitchen door opened. Jessica Crane walked in, looking perfectly composed in a cream cashmere sweater and designer jeans. She'd been here the whole time, listening in the next room. "Still playing the victim, Claire?" Jessica said. "How predictable." "Why are you here?" Claire's voice came out hoarse. "Because David asked me to come." Jessica walked over and stood next to David. Close, possessive. "We're together now, officially, and unlike you, I'm not going to trap him with a baby." She paused, letting the words sink in. Then she smiled, and it was cruel. "Oh, didn't he tell you? I'm pregnant too. 3 months. We're keeping ours." The world tilted. Claire looked at David, waiting for the denial. It didn't come. He just looked away, jaw tight. 3 months. The affair hadn't been one drunken night. It had been going on for months, while Claire worked late building his company, while she comforted him about his father's illness, while she planned their anniversary party. Jessica had been there, waiting, plotting. "Claire, please." David's voice shifted to something softer, almost kind. "Just drink the wine. It'll help you calm down. Then we can talk about this like adults." He pushed the glass across the counter. Red wine, her favorite vintage. Claire looked at it, then at Dr. Mitchell, then at the pill bottle. Every person in this room wanted her to disappear, wanted her to comply, wanted her to make herself small and convenient. She'd spent 7 years making herself small. Claire picked up the glass. Her hand still shook. She raised it to her lips. The wine was bitter. Wrong. She realized it too late. What did you put in this? She looked at Dr. Mitchell, then at David. What did you... The room tilted. The glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Red wine spread like blood. Claire tried to step back, but her legs wouldn't work. David caught her before she fell. What did you do? She whispered. I made a hard choice, David said, his face close to hers. For both of us. Everything went black. Claire woke in the master bedroom. Morning light streamed through the windows, too bright, hurting her eyes. She tried to sit up and gasped. Pain radiated through her abdomen. The sheets beneath her were stained with blood. Dr. Mitchell sat in a chair by the bed, checking vitals on some medical equipment. When he saw her wake, he stood and came closer. The bleeding is normal, he said quietly. The process should complete in 24 to 48 hours. Is the baby... Claire couldn't finish the sentence. Tears streamed down her face. The medication was administered last night, Dr. Mitchell said, not meeting her eyes. Your husband felt it was the best option for everyone. David stood at the window, back turned, silhouette dark against the bright morning. He didn't turn around when she spoke. You drugged me, Claire said. You put the pill in the wine, and you drugged me. I made a hard choice for both of us, David said to the window. You'll thank me eventually. He turned then, and his face was cold, businesslike, the face he wore in boardroom negotiations. I've drafted divorce papers. Sign them. Take the settlement money. $500,000 and your silence. He gestured to Dr. Mitchell, who produced a folder and a check. That's more than generous, Claire. More than you'd get in court, given your mental state. You drugged me, she said again, because it was the only thing her brain could process. You drugged your wife and forced an abortion. I made an executive decision, David said. Sign the papers. Dr. Mitchell placed everything on the nightstand, then whispered, If you need anything, I'm sorry. They left her alone. Claire lay in bed, bleeding, crying, grieving for the baby she thought she'd lost. The baby David had tried to erase. She didn't move for hours, couldn't move. The physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow emptiness inside her. 3 days later, Claire went to see Sarah Hayes for a follow-up appointment. She'd found the clinic online, a small women's health center in a different neighborhood, somewhere David wouldn't think to look. Dr. Hayes was in her 50s, with salt and pepper hair in a short pixie cut and warm brown eyes. She didn't ask questions when Claire gave a fake name, just helped her onto the exam table and started the ultrasound. Dr. Hayes frowned at the screen, her hand stilled on the wand. Mrs. Morrison, when did you take the medication? A week ago, Claire said, staring at the ceiling. Why basically? Is something wrong? Dr. Hayes turned the screen toward her. Because you are still pregnant. The abortion failed. Claire's breath caught. She looked at the monitor. At first, she couldn't understand what she was seeing. Then Dr. Hayes pointed. Not only that, Dr. Hayes said softly, you're carrying quadruplets. 4 heartbeats. You're all strong. 4 tiny shapes flickered on the screen. 4 heartbeats pulsed in rapid rhythm. 4 lives. 4 miracles. Claire pressed her hands to her mouth. He tried to kill them. But they survived, Dr. Hayes said. The question is, what do you want to do now? Claire looked at the screen, at the 4 tiny lives that refused to give up, that held on despite everything, that survived what should have killed them. I want to continue the pregnancy, Claire said, her voice strong for the first time in days. But he can't know. No one can know. Dr. Hayes turned off the machine and helped Claire sit up. Then we need to get you somewhere safe, because carrying quadruplets is high risk. You'll need constant monitoring, proper nutrition, and 0 stress. I have money, Claire said. He gave me a check for $500,000. Hush money. Then cash it before he changes his mind, Dr. Hayes said, and we'll get you somewhere he'll never find you. Claire emptied her bank accounts the next morning. $500,000 in cash and certified checks, split between 2 duffel bags. She cut her auburn hair short in a gas station bathroom and dyed it dark brown using a box kit. In a thrift store, she bought oversized clothes, sunglasses, and a burner phone. By noon, she was on a train to New York City. By evening, she stood outside a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, staring up at the flickering lights of artists' lofts. Dr. Hayes had made the arrangements. Maya Torres, a struggling artist from Claire's college debate team, needed a roommate. Boom. Dr. Hayes hadn't told Maya much, just that Claire was escaping a bad situation and needed somewhere to stay off the grid. Maya answered the door in paint-stained jeans and an oversized sweater. Her dark curly hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her hands were covered in acrylic paint in shades of blue and gold. "Claire?" Maya stepped back, eyes widening. "Oh my God, Dr. Hayes said you needed help, but I didn't realize." She pulled Claire into a hug. "Come in. You're safe here." The loft was small but warm. Canvases covered every wall, splashes of color and emotion. The spare room was barely bigger than a closet, but it had a window overlooking the street and a door that locked. "Stay as long as you need," Maya said, showing Claire around. "The bathroom's shared, and the hot water's temperamental. But it's home. Dr. Hayes said you're pregnant." "Yes," Claire said. She didn't mention how many, didn't mention the failed abortion. Just said, "I'm pregnant and I need somewhere to hide for a while." "Then you've got it," Maya said. No questions asked. That night, Claire lay in the narrow bed and touched her stomach. Somewhere inside, 4 tiny hearts were beating, 4 lives that refused to give up. She pulled out a laptop she'd bought with Kick and started researching. Morrison Pharmaceuticals, corporate structure, ownership shares, financial records. Her father, Richard Bennett, had founded the research division. His intellectual property and $15 million investment had made the company possible. In his will, he'd stipulated that the Bennett family would retain 40% equity. Claire had signed those shares over to David 2 years ago, right after her father's death. She'd been grieving, overwhelmed, and David had said it would simplify things, make management easier. Now, pulling up archived documents from the corporate filings database, Claire saw the truth. The signatures on the transfer documents didn't match hers. David had forged them. He'd stolen her inheritance, stolen her father's legacy, and used the money to build his empire. Claire opened a new document and started taking notes. Every discrepancy, every forged signature, every suspicious transaction. If she was going to survive this, she needed more than money. She needed ammunition. Weeks passed. Claire's belly grew. Morning sickness came in waves, brutal and relentless. Maya brought her crackers and ginger tea, never asking too many questions. Dr. Hayes visited once a week for checkups, monitoring the 4 heartbeats with portable equipment. At 16 weeks, Claire could feel them moving, tiny flutters, like butterflies. She'd read that mothers of multiples felt movement earlier, and she understood why. There were 4 of them in there, swimming and growing and fighting for space. She was sitting at the tiny desk in her room researching corporate fraud statutes when Maya knocked on the door. "Claire, there's someone here to see you." Claire's heart stopped. "Who?" "He says his name is Marcus Reed. Says he was your father's law partner." Marcus Reed. Claire remembered him vaguely from her father's funeral. Distinguished looking, with graying hair and kind eyes. He'd given a eulogy about integrity and friendship. She opened the door cautiously. Marcus stood in Maya's living room, wearing a wool coat and carrying a leather briefcase. When he saw Claire, his expression softened. "Claire Bennett Morrison," he said. "Your father made me promise to look after you." "How did you find me?" "Your burner phone is untraceable, but you used your real email for the LexisNexis legal research database." He smiled slightly. "Rookie mistake. Good thing I found you first." Claire stepped back, hand protective of him over her stomach. "Are you going to tell David?" "Tell him what?" Marcus set down his briefcase and opened it. "That his supposedly mentally unstable wife is actually building an airtight corporate fraud case against him? Hell no, I'm here to help." He pulled out folders, documents, financial statements. "Your father was my best friend," Marcus said. "He saved my career once when I was accused of malpractice. He stood by me when no one else would. I owed him everything." He looked at Claire's belly. "And I owe you the same loyalty, especially now." "David forged the documents," Claire said. "The ownership transfer after Dad died." "I know." Marcus spread papers across Maya's coffee table. "He's also been embezzling. 3 years of creative accounting. Offshore accounts. shell corporations. He's stolen $12 million from Morrison Pharma, and if the SEC audits them, they'll find it all. Claire sat down heavily. Why are you telling me this? Because your father's original investment stipulates that the Bennett family retains 40% equity. Those shares are legally yours. David stole them, and I can prove it. He looked at her seriously. But we need to be strategic. We need time to build an ironclad case. How long do we have? Claire touched her stomach. 9 months. Maybe less. I'm carrying quadruplets. Marcus's eyes widened. Jesus, okay. He sat across from her. Then we have 9 months to build Fort Knox. For the first time since the night of her anniversary, Claire felt something like hope. Maybe she could fight back. Maybe these 4 lives inside her could have their inheritance. Maybe David Morrison's cruelty could be turned against him. Tell me everything, Claire said. They worked through the night, Marcus explaining corporate law, Claire showing him the discrepancies she'd found. By dawn, they had the outline of a case that could destroy David's empire. Weeks turned into months. Claire's belly grew larger. At 24 weeks, she could barely fit through doorways. The babies were active now, constantly moving. Hope kicked her ribs. Grace pressed against her bladder. Luke and Noah fought for space near her spine. She'd named them already. Whispered the names in the quiet hours of the night when she couldn't sleep. 4 names for 4 miracles. Maya was kind, bringing her food, helping her when the pregnancy exhaustion became overwhelming. They watched movies together. Maya taught Claire to paint, said it was therapeutic. They had girls' nights with ice cream and bad romantic comedies. For a few weeks, Claire almost forgot she was hiding. Almost forgot that out there, David was telling everyone she'd had a mental breakdown. That Jessica was playing the concerned ex-best friend on television interviews. Then one night, Claire heard Maya on the phone. She got it up to use the bathroom, moving carefully because the babies made her clumsy. Maya's door was cracked open. Claire heard her voice, low and urgent. Yeah, she's still here. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Look, you promised you'd pay off my landlord if I kept you updated. Claire froze in the hallway. Jessica, I don't like this. She's really nice and she's pregnant and this feels wrong. The name hit like a physical blow. Claire backed away slowly, careful not to make noise. Back to her room. She locked the door with shaking hands and sat on the bed. Maya. Maya Torres, her friend from college debate team. Maya who'd taken her in, who'd been so kind. Maya was working for Jessica. How long? How much had she told them? Did Jessica know about the babies? Did David know she was still pregnant? Claire didn't sleep that night. She packed everything into her duffel bags. Cash, documents, laptop, clothes. By dawn, she had an exit strategy. Maya was making coffee when Claire walked out with her bags. Morning, Maya said, smiling. Want pancakes? You and the babies need... How much did she pay you? Claire asked. Maya's smile froze. What? Jessica, how much did she pay you to spy on me? The color drained from Maya's face. Claire, I can explain. How much? Claire's voice was cold, sharp. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She owns my building. She was going to evict me. I'm 3 months behind on rent. She said if I just let her know you were safe, if I kept her updated, she'd wipe the debt. The words came fast, desperate. I never told her anything important. Just that you were okay. That you were pregnant. Claire's hand went to her stomach. You told her I'm still pregnant. I'm so sorry. Maya was crying now. She threatened me. I didn't know what to do. I needed the apartment, and she said she just wanted to know you were safe, and I didn't think... Did you tell her I'm having 4? No. Maya shook her head frantically. I swear, I didn't tell her that part. That's the only reason I'm not calling the police. Claire walked to the door. When this is over, when I take back everything they stole, you'll have to live knowing you helped them. She walked out. The door closed behind her with a final click. Maya called after her, but Claire didn't look back. She had 4 lives to protect. 4 miracles who were counting on her. She couldn't trust anyone except Dr. Hayes and Marcus. And she couldn't stay in New York anymore. The news broke 3 days later. Claire saw it on a television in a motel lobby somewhere in Pennsylvania. David Morrison, CEO of Morrison Pharmaceuticals, standing in front of cameras with tears in his eyes. My wife, Claire, has been missing for 3 months, he said, voice breaking in all the right places. She's been struggling with her mental health since her father's death. We're worried she might hurt herself. If anyone has seen her, please contact the authorities. The screen showed Claire's photo, her old photo, from before she cut her hair. Auburn waves, bright smile, emerald dress from their anniversary party. She looked happy, innocent, trusting. The reporter's voiceover. Morrison says his wife suffered a miscarriage shortly before her disappearance and may have experienced a mental break. He's offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to her safe return. A miscarriage. So that was his story. She'd lost the baby, lost her mind, and run away. Poor fragile Claire. She checked out of the motel and drove deeper into rural Pennsylvania. Dr. Hayes found her a women's shelter in a small town, but Claire only stayed 2 weeks. One of the volunteers recognized her from the news coverage. "Honey," the woman said, all kindness and concern, "your husband's been looking for you. He seems really worried. Maybe you should call him. Work things out." Claire ran, barely made it to her car. The stress triggered contractions, false labor at 28 weeks. She drove to Dr. Hayes' rural clinic, gasping through pain, terrified she'd lose them. Dr. Hayes gave her medication to stop the contractions, kept her overnight for monitoring. 4 heartbeats on the ultrasound, still strong, still fighting. "You need to stay hidden," Dr. Hayes said. "David's lawyers are getting aggressive. They're trying to have you declared mentally incompetent." What does that mean? It means if they succeed, David gets medical power of attorney. He could force hospitalization, force psychiatric treatment. Dr. Hayes' expression was grim. "He's trying to lock you up, Claire." At 30 weeks, Marcus called with worse news. David's lawyers had served Dr. Hayes with a subpoena. They knew Claire had been to her clinic. They were closing in. "How do I hide for 7 more weeks?" Claire asked. She was huge now, belly stretched tight over 4 growing babies. She couldn't walk more than a few minutes without getting winded. Couldn't hide in crowds. Couldn't run anymore. "You stay with me," Dr. Hayes said. "I have a farmhouse 2 hours from here. No internet, no paper trail, just you, me, and those 4 miracles." Claire packed her bags again. Dr. Hayes drove her to a small farmhouse surrounded by fields and forest. No neighbors for miles, no traffic, just quiet and safety. "Why are you doing this?" Claire asked as they unloaded the car. "You could lose your medical license. David's lawyers could come after you." Hayes stopped, hands full of grocery bags, and looked at Claire. 15 years ago, my daughter called me from a shelter. Her husband was hunting her, just like yours is hunting you. She was scared. She wanted to come home." "What happened?" "I told her to come home. She tried." Dr. Hayes' voice broke. He found her on the highway, ran her car off the road. She died instantly. Silence filled the space between them. Claire understood then. This wasn't charity. This was atonement. Dr. Hayes couldn't save her own daughter, but she could save someone else's. "I won't let that happen to you," Dr. Hayes said. "Not to you or your babies." The farmhouse became their sanctuary. Claire slept in a bedroom with windows overlooking fields of corn and soybeans. Dr. Hayes checked the baby's heartbeats every day, monitoring growth and movement. Marcus visited once a week with updates on the legal case, always careful to make sure no one followed him. Outside, the world kept spinning. Jessica gave interviews about her worry for her poor, disturbed friend. David played the concerned husband. Morrison Pharmaceuticals' stock price climbed. Everyone believed the story they'd crafted. Meanwhile, Claire counted down the weeks. 31, 32, 33. The babies grew bigger, pressing against her ribs and spine. She couldn't sleep lying down anymore, had to prop herself up with pillows. Her ankles swelled, her back ached constantly. But the babies were healthy, strong. 4 miracles who'd survived what should have killed them. At 37 weeks, Dr. Hayes scheduled the C-section at a small county hospital 2 towns over. They'd use a fake name, Jane Doe. No records, no trail. "After the surgery, you'll recover at the farmhouse for 6 weeks, Dr. Hayes said. Then we register the births under your maiden name. As far as the world knows, Claire Morrison is still missing. Claire Bennett just had 4 babies. And then, Claire asked. Then we wait until you're strong enough to fight back, until the babies are strong enough to withstand the chaos. Dr. Hayes checked the calendar. Give yourself 12 months, 1 year to heal, to build your case, to become the woman who can walk into that boardroom and take everything back. Claire looked down at her enormous belly, at the 4 lives that had survived against all odds. 12 months, she agreed, and then we burn his world down. The night before the C-section, Claire sat by the farmhouse window and watching stars emerge in the dark sky. She thought about David, probably sleeping peacefully in their Winnetka mansion. About Jessica, probably planning her own fake pregnancy announcement to complete her takeover of Claire's life. They thought she was broken, thought she was hiding forever, thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. The morning of September 14th was peaceful, quiet, the kind of morning where the world felt soft around the edges. Claire woke early, touching her belly, feeling the babies move one last time before they'd meet the world outside. Today's the day, she whispered. Hope, Grace, Luke, Noah. Today you get to breathe real air. Today you get to be real people instead of secret miracles. Dr. Hayes drove her to County General Hospital before dawn. They checked in under the name Jane Doe. The surgical team had been carefully chosen, doctors who asked no questions and kept no records beyond what was legally required. Marcus waited outside the operating room, watching through the window. He'd become something like family over these months. Not a father figure exactly, but a guardian, a protector. The anesthesiologist gave Claire a spinal block. She stayed awake for the surgery just like she'd wanted. She needed to see them born, needed to watch the 4 lives emerge. Hayes worked quickly, efficiently. The surgical team moved with practiced coordination. And then, a cry high and sharp and perfect. Hope, Dr. Hayes announced. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, perfect APGAR scores. Another cry, louder this time. Grace, 5 pounds, 11 ounces. Strong lungs on this one. A third cry. Luke, 6 pounds even. Here's your boy, Mama. And finally a fourth. Noah, 5 pounds, 8 ounces, E4 healthy. They placed each baby on Claire's chest briefly, just long enough for her to see them, to touch their impossibly tiny fingers, to smell that newborn smell, milk and warmth and promise. Hope had auburn hair like Claire's. Grace had David's nose. Luke's eyes were blue-gray, might turn green eventually. Noah was smaller than the others but fierce, already trying to lift his head. He tried to end one life, Claire whispered, tears streaming down her face. Instead, 4 lives began. The nurses took the babies to warming tables. Claire heard them crying, healthy and loud. 4 reasons to keep fighting. Recovery was brutal. A C-section alone was major surgery. A C-section with quadruplets left, Claire feeling like she'd been hit by a truck. Every movement hurt. Every breath ached. But the babies were healthy, and that was all that mattered. Dr. Hayes brought them to her room one at a time. Hope first, since she's the oldest by 3 minutes. Then Grace, then Luke, then Noah. Claire held each baby, marveling at how perfect they were, how small, how absolutely worth everything she'd been through. For 6 weeks, they lived at the farmhouse. Claire healed slowly, her body recovering from pregnancy and surgery. The babies grew stronger, more alert. They started recognizing her voice, her face, her smell. Maya called twice, leaving messages that Claire deleted without listening. Marcus visited weekly, bringing legal documents and updates on the case against David. The evidence was overwhelming now. Forged signatures, embezzlement, fraud. When you're ready, Marcus said, we file everything at once. Corporate fraud, identity theft, stolen assets, custody. We hit him from every angle, and we don't give him time to recover. How long until I'm ready? Marcus looked at the 4 babies sleeping in their bassinets. You tell me. Claire watched them breathe. 4 tiny chests rising and falling. 4 miracles who deserved their inheritance, who deserved justice. 12 months, she said. I want them strong. I want me stronger. Then we burn his world down. The 12 months passed like a dream. Claire transformed herself systematically, physically first. She worked out in the farmhouse basement, rebuilding strength. The baby weight dropped away, replaced by muscle. She started running again, 5 miles every morning before the babies woke up. Then mentally, she took online courses in business management and corporate law, studied Morrison Pharmaceuticals' financial statements until she could recite them from memory, built a case so airtight that David's lawyers would have nowhere to hide. Marcus brought her new clothes, power suits in navy and charcoal, heels that added 3 inches to her height, diamond stud earrings that caught the light just right. Ducard Hayes taught her self-defense. "You're never going to be powerless again," she said, showing Claire how to break a wrist hold, how to deliver an incapacitating strike, how to run in heels. The babies grew. They rolled over at 4 months, sat up at 6 months, started crawling at 8 months. By 10 months, they were walking, stumbling around the farmhouse on chubby legs, babbling in their own language. Hope was the leader, always first to try new things. Grace was cautious but determined. Luke was gentle, always checking on his sisters. Noah was the troublemaker, getting into everything. Claire read them stories every night, whispered promises. "You're going to have everything, I swear it. Your grandfather's legacy, your inheritance, your place in the world, and no one's ever going to take it away from you." At 11 months, Marcus brought news that made Claire's blood run cold. Jessica had announced her pregnancy on morning television. 3 months along, glowing and happy, talking about her and David's excitement about becoming parents. Except Jessica had never been pregnant. Claire and Marcus both knew it. Jessica had used a fake pregnancy to trap David, to secure her position. Now she was maintaining the lie, probably planning to fake a miscarriage eventually or find some other excuse. "She's building her own empire on lies," Marcus said, "just like David did." Claire looked at her 4 babies playing on the floor, Hope stacking blocks, Grace chewing a teething ring, Luke hugging a stuffed bear, Noah pulling himself up on the couch. "Then we destroy them both," Claire said. "We're done hiding. It's time to go home." She cut her hair into a sleek bob, dyed it back to auburn, bought designer clothes and expensive makeup, practiced walking in her heels until she could do it in her sleep. On the morning of the 12th month, Claire looked at herself in the mirror. Gone was the terrified woman who'd fled into the night. In her place stood someone sharp, focused, powerful. A CEO in waiting. A mother with something to fight for. Marcus had arranged everything. The shareholder meeting was scheduled for October 15th. Morrison Pharmaceuticals' annual gala, black tie, every board member present. David would give his usual speech about record profits and company growth. And Claire would walk through those doors with 4 miracles and burn his perfect world to ash. "Are you ready?" Dr. Hayes asked, helping Claire pack the baby's things. Claire looked at Hope, Grace, Luke, and Noah. They were beautiful, perfect, worth every moment of pain and fear and running. "I'm ready," Claire said. "Let's go reclaim what's mine." The drive from Pennsylvania to Chicago took 8 hours. Claire sat in the back of Marcus's Mercedes with 4 car seats strapped in. The babies slept most of the way, occasionally fussing for bottles or diaper changes. Normal baby things, things that had nothing to do with corporate fraud and stolen inheritances and revenge. Claire had hired 4 nannies for the evening, professionals who worked events and galas, women who could handle toddlers in formal settings. They met at the hotel where Claire had booked a suite under her maiden name. "We arrive at 7:15, Marcus explained, reviewing the plan one final time. "David starts his speech at 7. You make your entrance at 7:10. Maximum drama, maximum visibility." Claire nodded. She'd put on her white Armani power suit, pinned her hair back with diamond clips, applied makeup with a steady hand. She looked at herself in the hotel mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. This woman was fierce, unbreakable, ready for war. The Morrison Pharmaceuticals ballroom was exactly as she remembered. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, champagne fountains, 200 people in evening wear, networking and laughing and celebrating another successful year. David stood at the podium in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, distinguished, handsome, charming, the mask he wore for the world. Claire checked her watch. 7:10 exactly. "Go," she told the nannies. They pushed open the double doors. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Claire walked in, heels clicking against marble with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Behind her, 4 silver strollers. 4 babies in matching outfits. She watched David's face go white. Watched board members freeze with champagne glasses halfway to their lips. Watched Jessica, sitting at the head table, lose every bit of color in her cheeks. Claire walked down the center aisle. The crowd parted. She reached the podium and stopped, looking up at the man who had tried to erase her. "Hello, David," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Miss me?" The rest happened exactly as she'd planned. David's stammering denial, Claire's presentation of evidence, Marcus stepping forward with financial documents and DNA tests, board members erupting in chaos. Within 15 minutes, the room was in complete disorder. Within 30 minutes, news cameras were outside. Within an hour, every major outlet had the story. Pharma CEO's missing wife returns with quadruplets. Morrison scandal, fraud, forgery, enforced abortion. 4 heirs to challenge corporate empire. The board voted to suspend David pending investigation. They granted Claire controlling shareholder status based on her father's original investment. They installed an interim CFO as temporary CEO while they sorted through the mess. Jessica tried to slip out a side door, but security stopped her at Marcus's request. She'd have to face questions eventually, have to explain her lies. Claire gathered her babies and left the ballroom, ignoring the shouting reporters and flashing cameras. She'd said what she needed to say. Now the legal system would do its work. 2 weeks later, the media coverage was still insane. Claire's story was everywhere. Magazine covers, television interviews, think pieces about corporate fraud and domestic violence. The hashtag 4heirs trended on every platform. The board officially appointed Claire as chief strategy officer. Marcus became general counsel. Dr. Hayes joined as chief medical officer, heading up a new maternal health initiative. Claire moved into a corporate apartment in downtown Chicago with the babies. 4 cribs lined up in the spare bedroom. A nanny service helped with childcare during work hours. Claire brought the babies to board meetings, let them play in her office while she reviewed financial statements. Morrison Pharmaceuticals had been sick at the core. David's embezzlement had created holes everywhere. Jessica's manipulation had promoted incompetent people to key positions. The company needed major restructuring, but Claire knew how to do this. She'd built the brand once before. She could rebuild it again. Better this time. Ethical. Strong. Marcus called her on a Tuesday afternoon. "Board meeting tomorrow. They're voting on the permanent CEO position." "You've got the votes, Claire? This is it." "Already?" Claire looked at the babies playing on the floor of her office. "It's only been 2 weeks. You've turned the company around in 2 weeks. Revenue is up. Stock price recovered. The restructuring is working." Marcus paused. "You earned this." The board meeting lasted 3 hours. They reviewed her performance, asked questions about her vision for the company's future, discussed concerns about her personal situation. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Claire Morrison would become CEO of Morrison Bennett Pharmaceuticals, effective immediately. She called Dr. Hayes that night. "We did it. The board voted me in." "Congratulations," Dr. Hayes said, and Claire could hear the smile in her voice. "Your father would be so proud." Claire looked at the 4 babies sleeping in their cribs, Hope with her thumb in her mouth, Grace clutching her stuffed bear, Luke and Noah tangled together like puppies. "I couldn't have done it without you. Any of it." "Yes, you could have," Dr. Hayes said gently. "I just helped you survive long enough to become who you were always meant to be." That night, Claire opened a bottle of wine and sat on the couch in her corporate apartment. She looked at the framed photo of her father on the bookshelf, Dr. Richard Bennett, smiling in his lab coat, holding up a beaker like a toast. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "We got it back." Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Board votes you CEO next month. It's over. You won." Claire smiled, closed her eyes. For the first time in 21 months, she let herself relax completely. They were safe. The babies were safe. Morrison Bennett Pharmaceuticals was hers. She'd won. The banging on the door came at 7 in the morning. Claire had been up for an hour already, feeding the babies their breakfast. Hope was in her high chair, throwing Cheerios on the floor. Grace was actually eating, carefully picking up each piece. Luke and Noah were having a food fight, giggling wildly. Normal morning chaos. Beautiful chaos. The banging came again, hard and insistent. Claire put down the bottle she was holding and went to the door. Through the peephole, she saw two police officers and a woman in a business suit carrying a clipboard. Something cold settled in Claire's stomach. She opened the door with the chain still on. "Claire Morrison?" the woman asked. "Yes." "I'm Jennifer Walsh from Child Protective Services. We have a court order for the emergency removal of your 4 children." The words hit like a physical blow. Claire's hand went to the door frame to steady herself. "What? On what grounds?" "Anonymous tip claiming you're mentally unstable with a history of drug use and erratic behavior. The children are believed to be in imminent danger." Walsh held up papers. "Judge Morrison signed the order this morning." Judge Morrison, David's fraternity brother from Yale, the one Marcus had warned her about. "I've never used drugs," Claire said, her voice shaking. "My children are healthy and safe. This is retaliation because I exposed my ex-husband's fraud." "Ma'am, we have photographs." Walsh showed her printouts, Claire at college parties, holding red cups, pills visible on the table beside her, and witness statements saying you've been erratic, paranoid, and potentially dangerous. "Those photos are 10 years old," Claire said, "from college. That's Advil and Tylenol PM. I was studying for finals." "The metadata says they were taken last month." Walsh's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison, but we have to follow the court order. Please step aside." "No." Claire gripped the doorframe harder. "You can't take them. They're mine. I fought for them. I protected them." The police officers moved forward. "Ma'am, if you don't comply, we'll have to arrest you for obstruction." Claire heard the babies crying in the kitchen, Hope calling Mama, Mama, in that confused voice that meant something was wrong. "Please," Claire whispered, "please don't do this. Call my lawyer, Marcus Reed at Reed and Associates. He can explain everything." "You can call him from the station," one officer said. "Right now, we need to take the children into protective custody." They pushed past her. Claire tried to block them, but the officers restrained her, pulling her arms back. She watched helplessly as Walsh and another CPS worker went into the apartment. The babies were screaming now. All 4 of them terrified by strangers invading their home. The nannies tried to calm them, but Hope reached for Claire, crying, "Mama, Mama," with tears streaming down her face. "Please," Claire sobbed, fighting against the officers holding her. "They're scared. Let me calm them down, please." But they didn't stop. Walsh and the workers gathered the babies one by one, placing them in carriers. Grace clung to her stuffed bear. Luke was screaming so hard he could barely breathe. Noah reached for Claire with both hands. "Mama," Hope cried. "Mama." "I'm here, baby," Claire called to her. "Mommy's here. It's going to be okay." But it wasn't okay. They took all 4 babies, carried them out the door while Claire stood restrained in her own apartment, mascara running down her face, heart breaking into pieces. "If you calm down, we won't arrest you," the officer said, "but you need to let them go." Claire collapsed when they released her. She sank to the floor, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Through the window, she watched them load her babies into a van, watched Hope's terrified face through the glass, watched the van drive away. Gone. Her 4 miracles. Gone. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later. He found Claire curled on the floor, still crying. He helped her up, got her water, made phone calls while she sat numbly on the couch. "The photos," he said, hanging up his phone. "Someone altered the metadata to make them look recent. The judge is David's Yale fraternity brother. This whole thing was orchestrated." "Can you get them back?" Claire's voice was hoarse from screaming. "I'm filing emergency motions now." "But Claire, it'll take 48 to 72 hours to prove the photos are fake. The kids will be in foster care until then." "No," Claire stood up, adrenaline replacing the grief. "No, no, no. Hope called for me. She reached for me and I couldn't help her." "I know, I'm sorry, but we need to follow procedure." "Procedure?" Claire whirled on him. "The procedure failed me, Marcus. The courts failed me. The system protects men like David. Men with money and connections. And now my babies are with strangers, terrified and alone, because I played by the rules. What are you thinking? Claire pulled out her phone. She'd been quiet for 21 months, hidden, careful, following legal procedure, being the good victim who did everything right, and it hadn't been enough. I'm done playing by their rules, she said. Get me in front of a camera. I'm going public with everything. Claire, that could backfire. If you look unstable or emotional, I am emotional, Claire said. I'm a mother whose children were stolen based on fake evidence and a corrupt judge, and I'm going to make sure the whole world knows it. She walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Her face was blotchy from crying, mascara streaked, hair a mess. Good. Let them see what this looked like. Let them see what David and Jessica had done. She washed her face, pulled her hair back, changed into a simple blouse and jeans. No power suit this time. No armor, just a mother who'd lost her children. Where's the nearest courthouse? She asked Marcus. Cook County, downtown. But Claire, that's where we're going, and I'm going to tell them everything. They drove in silence. Claire stared out the window, thinking about Hope's terrified face, about Grace clutching her bear, about Luke and Noah crying, about how small they were, how scared they must be. Every mother knows that fear. The what if. The nightmare of someone taking your child. Claire had lived through it once already, carrying the babies while David hunted her. Now she was living it again. Some people think motherhood makes you weak, makes you soft. They're wrong. Motherhood makes you dangerous, makes you willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, destroy anything that threatens your child. David Morrison was about to learn that lesson. Claire stood on the courthouse steps at noon. The lunch crowd was out, people in business suits grabbing food from vendors. Joggers passed by. Tourists took photos. She pulled out her iPhone, opened Instagram, and hit the live button. Within seconds, viewers started joining. 100, 1,000, 10,000. The numbers climbed as Claire stared into the camera. My name is Claire Morrison, she said, her voice steady despite everything. And I need to tell you what's happening right now. The view counter on Claire's phone climbed like a rocket. 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. She stood on the courthouse steps, phone in hand, and spoke directly to the camera. 21 months ago, my husband drugged me with an abortion pill without my consent, Claire said. Her voice was steady now, clear. The crying was done. This was business. He wanted to terminate my pregnancy because it interfered with his company's IPO, because his image was more important than my choice, because he'd already started an affair with my best friend and my pregnancy was inconvenient. She held up the medical records Marcus had given her, pages and pages of documentation. The abortion failed. I was carrying quadruplets, 4 babies who survived despite everything he tried to do to them. I ran, I hid. I spent 9 months terrified he'd find me and finish what he started. 200,000 viewers now. The comments section was exploding. Claire didn't look at them, just kept talking. 9 months later, I gave birth to Hope, Grace, Luke, and Noah. 4 healthy babies. I spent a year building a case against my ex-husband for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and forged documents. 2 weeks ago, I returned to Morrison Pharmaceuticals and presented that evidence to the board. They suspended him. They gave me my rightful ownership stake. They appointed me Chief Strategy Officer. She paused, letting that sink in. This morning, Child Protective Services removed my 4 children from my home based on falsified evidence. The photographs they presented were taken 10 years ago in college. Someone altered the metadata to make them look recent. The judge who signed the emergency removal order is my ex-husband's Yale fraternity brother. 300,000 viewers. The system is supposed to protect children. Instead, it's being used as a weapon by powerful men who don't like losing control. My children are in foster care right now because I dared to fight back, because I exposed corruption, because I refused to stay silent. She held up her phone, showing the documents on screen. DNA tests, financial records, the forged signatures on her inheritance. This is proof that David Morrison embezzled $12 million from Morrison Pharmaceuticals. This is proof he stole my father's intellectual property and 40% ownership stake through forged documents. This is proof of everything I've said. She lowered the phone, looking directly into the camera. I'm not asking for pity. I'm demanding justice. If you're a mother who's been told you're too unstable, too emotional, too broken to fight back, this is for you. If you've been drugged, coerced, gaslit, this is for you. If you've ever felt powerless against someone with more money and connections, this is for you. 400,000 viewers. They wanted me to disappear. They wanted me to stay quiet. They wanted me to choose between my life and my children's lives. Claire's voice broke slightly, but she pushed through. Instead, 4 lives began. 4 miracles who survived and were not going anywhere, not anymore. She ended the stream. The number showed 500,000 live viewers at the end, but that was just the beginning. Within minutes, clips were being shared across every platform. Within an hour, news networks were covering it. Within 3 hours, protesters started gathering outside the courthouse. Women with signs. We believe Claire. Protect mothers, not abusers. Justice for the 4 heirs. Marcus got a call at 2 p.m. FBI's involved now. They're opening an investigation into the photo metadata. Judge Morrison is being reviewed by the Judicial Conduct Board, and there's an emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. Will they give them back? Claire asked. If we can prove the photos are fake, yes. How long until we can prove it? Agent Thompson from the FBI Digital Forensics Unit can be here by 6 p.m. He'll examine the original files, trace the IP addresses, document everything. Claire nodded. She felt numb, hollow. The viral video, they had taken everything she had left. Now she just had to wait. Agent Thompson arrived with a laptop and various technical equipment. He was young, methodical, wearing a standard FBI suit and tie. He examined the photos Walsh had provided, pulled metadata, traced digital fingerprints. At 8 p.m., he looked up. These files were modified on April 3rd of this year. The original photos were taken in 2014, confirmed by camera serial numbers. The modifications were made on a computer registered to Morrison Pharmaceuticals' internal network, specifically a workstation assigned to Jessica Crane. Marcus leaned forward. Can you testify to this in court? Yes, I can also provide a written report with full technical documentation. Then we go after Jessica too, Claire said. She altered evidence in a custody proceeding. That's criminal. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next morning. Claire didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. She sat in the corporate apartment staring at the 4 empty cribs, imagining her babies crying for her in some foster home. Hope would be the bravest, trying to comfort the others even though she was scared too. Grace would cry quietly, clutching her bear. Luke and Noah would cling to each other, all of them wondering why Mama wasn't there. At 9:30, Claire put on a Navy suit and met Marcus outside Cook County Courthouse. The crowd of protesters had grown overnight. Hundreds of women lined the steps, chanting and holding signs. They're here for you, Marcus said. You gave voice to something a lot of people have experienced. Inside, the courtroom was packed, standing room only. News cameras lined the back wall. Claire sat at the plaintiff's table with Marcus, hands folded, back straight. David sat on the opposite side with his lawyers. He looked tired, stressed. Good. Jessica wasn't there. Claire heard from a court officer that she tried to flee and was currently being detained. The judge entered. Not Judge Morrison this time. Judge Mariah Hernandez, known for being fair but tough. This case has received significant public attention, Judge Hernandez said, looking around the packed courtroom. I want to make something very clear. I don't care about social media hashtags. I don't care about viral videos. I care about facts, evidence, and the law. Is that understood? Both legal teams nodded. Good. Mr. Reed, you filed the emergency motion. Proceed. Marcus stood. Your Honor, we move to immediately return custody of Hope, Grace, Luke, and Noah Morrison to their mother, Claire Morrison, and to dismiss all allegations against her. The evidence used to justify removing the children has been proven false. He gestured to Agent Thompson, who took the stand. For 40 minutes, Agent Thompson explained digital forensics in terms a courtroom could understand. Metadata, EXIF data, IP address tracing, timestamps. He showed how the photos had been taken in 2014 during Claire's college years, then modified in April 2024 on a computer used by Jessica Crane. David's lawyer tried to argue. Your Honor, even if the photos are old, Mrs. Morrison's mental health history, grief counseling, Marcus interrupted, after her father's death, standard therapy that millions of Americans undergo, hardly grounds for declaring someone unfit. Judge Hernandez held up a hand. I've reviewed Dr. Hayes' medical records for Mrs. Morrison. She's been under continuous medical care throughout her pregnancy and after. All evaluations show her to be mentally sound and an excellent mother. She looked at David's lawyer. Do you have any actual evidence of unfitness? Your Honor, she disappeared for 9 months. While hiding from a man who drugged her, the judge said flatly, while carrying children, he'd tried to forcibly abort. I'm not seeing unfitness here. I'm seeing survival. She turned to the back of the courtroom. Is Jessica Crane present? A bailiff spoke up. She's being held in detention, Your Honor. She attempted to leave the state last night. Bring her in. They brought Jessica in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her designer clothes were gone. Her perfect hair was messy. She looked small. Ms. Crane, Judge Hernandez said, did you alter the photographs submitted as evidence in this custody case? Jessica's lawyer whispered in her ear. She ignored him. I was trying to protect David from Claire, Jessica said. Her voice shook. She's always been so perfect. She always had everything. I just wanted, yes or no, Ms. Crane? Yes. The word came out broken. Yes, I altered them, but Claire didn't deserve him. She didn't deserve any of it. I loved him first. 10 years ago at graduation, we had one night, and I knew he was supposed to be mine. But he chose her instead. He always chose her. The courtroom was silent. Jessica was confessing to a decade-long obsession, to manipulation, to fraud. Your Honor, Marcus said quietly, Ms. Crane falsified evidence in a custody proceeding. That's a felony. Bailiff, Judge Hernandez said, take Ms. Crane back into custody. We'll address her charges separately. She turned to David. Mr. Morrison, stand. David stood slowly. He looked older than Claire remembered, gray at his temples, lines around his eyes. I'm issuing an emergency order returning all 4 children to Mrs. Morrison's custody immediately, Judge Hernandez said. Furthermore, given the evidence of fraud, coercion, conspiracy, and attempted evidence tampering, I'm recommending criminal charges be filed against both you and Ms. Crane. Federal prosecutors are waiting outside. She looked at Claire. Mrs. Morrison, your children are downstairs with CPS. You're free to take them home. Claire stood on shaking legs. Thank you, Your Honor. She walked out of the courtroom, Marcus beside her, down the stairs, through the hallways, to the CPS office in the basement. A social worker opened a door to a playroom. 4 toddlers looked up. For a moment, they didn't react. Then Hope saw her. Mama! Hope scrambled up, running across the room. Mama! Mama! All 4 babies ran to her, crying mama and reaching up. Claire dropped to her knees and gathered them all into her arms. Hope's hair smelled like baby shampoo. Grace was still clutching her bear. Luke wrapped his arms around her neck. Noah buried his face in her shoulder. I'm so sorry, Claire sobbed, kissing each head over and over. Mommy's so sorry. You're safe now. You're safe. Dr. Hayes appeared in the doorway, tears on her face. Marcus stood behind her, smiling. Claire held her 4 miracles and felt something finally settle in her chest. They were together. They were safe. And no one would ever take them away again. 15 months later, Claire stood at a podium in front of 200 people. Same ballroom, same crystal chandeliers, different everything else. The Morrison Bennett Pharmaceuticals logo hung behind her, redesigned to incorporate both family names. Her father's legacy recognized. The board sat at the head table, all of them chosen for ethics and competence rather than connections. Dr. Hayes was among them now, chief medical officer leading 3 new maternal health initiatives. Marcus Reed sat on the board as general counsel. And in the front row, 4 toddlers sat with their nanny, occasionally babbling and waving at mama. Claire wore an elegant navy suit, hair pulled back, diamond studs catching the light. She looked at the audience and smiled. Thank you for joining us for the first annual meeting of Morrison Bennett Pharmaceuticals under new leadership, she said. When I walked out of my marriage 21 months ago, I had $847 in cash, 4 heartbeats inside me, and no idea if we'd survive the week. A few people laughed softly. Most listened intently. Today, I stand before you as CEO of a company that's not just profitable, but principled. We've launched 3 maternal health initiatives providing free prenatal care to underserved communities. We've expanded parental leave to 6 months for all employees, regardless of gender. We've increased our stock value by 40% while maintaining our commitment to ethical research and transparent accounting. She paused, looking at her children in the front row. Hope waved enthusiastically. Grace focused on her teddy bear. Luke and Noah were whispering to each other about something only toddlers understand. But our greatest innovation isn't a drug, Claire continued. It's proving that a mother's love is the most powerful force in business. Hope, Grace, Luke, Noah. The babies looked up when they heard their names. They're not just my children. They're the reason every working parent in this company now has on-site childcare, mental health resources, and a voice at the table. They're the reason we rewrote our ethics guidelines. They're the reason, she looked back at the audience. My ex-husband tried to end one life to protect his empire. Instead, 4 lives began and built a better one. The room erupted in applause. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her composure. She'd learned that over the past year. How to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. How to lead without armor. After the meeting, news reporters clustered around her. She gave brief interviews, professional and poised. The story wasn't shocking anymore, just inspiring. Woman overcomes domestic violence and corporate fraud. Woman builds ethical empire. Woman changes corporate America. The news clips that evening showed David Morrison in Prison Orange. The sentencing had been 9 years for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Jessica Crane got 6 years for evidence tampering, fraud, and stalking charges stemming from her 10-year obsession. Maya Torres had testified against Jessica in exchange for probation. She'd stood outside the courthouse afterwards and told reporters, "Claire deserved better from all of us. I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Claire had watched that interview and felt something like forgiveness. Not complete, not yet, but the beginning of it. Maya had been desperate and exploited. She'd made terrible choices, but she'd also helped bring Jessica down. That evening, Claire sat on the floor of her penthouse apartment with the babies. They were 2.5 now, old enough to have real personalities and preferences and opinions. Hope loved books, insisted on being read the same story 3 times every night. Grace was artistic, always drawing or playing with Play-Doh. Luke was gentle, always checking if anyone was sad. Noah was wild, climbing everything and getting into constant mischief. "Mama," Hope said, holding up a picture book. "Sorry?" "Once upon a time," Claire said, pulling them all close, "there was a mama with 4 little miracles." "Were they strong?" Grace asked, the same question she always asked. "The strongest," Claire said, kissing Grace's forehead, "because they survived when the whole world said they couldn't." "Like us?" Noah asked. "Exactly like you." The doorbell rang. Marcus entered with a briefcase, papers for the 4 Heirs Foundation. Claire had donated 60% of her shares to create a foundation supporting women leaving domestic violence situations. "You're donating that much?" Marcus had asked when she'd first proposed it. "You'd still be wealthy, but—" "They don't need $1 billion, Claire had said, looking at her children. "They need a world where mothers don't have to run, where women aren't drugged and gaslighted and told they're crazy. They need the system to change." Now Marcus handed her the final documents. "This makes it official. The 4 Heirs Foundation opens next month in 20 cities." "My father would be proud," Claire said softly. "He would," Marcus agreed. "And so would Dr. Hayes' daughter. You're building something that might save the next Claire or the next woman like you." After Marcus left, Claire stood on her penthouse balcony looking out at Chicago's skyline. The city glowed in the darkness, a million lights like tiny stars. Dr. Hayes had texted earlier, "Every mother who walks into my clinic now asks how to be like you." Claire had responded, "Tell them they already are. They just need to stop being small." Sometimes she thought about David in prison, about Jessica serving her sentence, about how their perfect empire had crumbled under the weight of their own corruption. Sometimes she wondered if they understood what they'd lost. Then she'd look at her 4 babies and realize it didn't matter. They were footnotes in her story now, cautionary tales, the villains who tried to destroy the hero and failed. Claire's story was bigger than them. It was about survival, about transformation, about refusing to stay silent when the system fails, about building something better from the ashes. She went back inside. The babies were getting sleepy, rubbing their eyes and yawning. She carried them to their bedroom one by one, tucked them into their beds, kissed 4 foreheads. Sweet dreams, Hope. Sweet dreams, Grace. Sweet dreams, Luke. Sweet dreams, Noah. Love you, Mama, Hope mumbled, already half asleep. I love you too, baby, all 4 of you. Forever. She stood in the doorway watching them sleep. 4 tiny chests rising and falling. 4 miracles who changed everything. 21 months ago, David Morrison had tried to end one life to protect his image. He drugged his wife, stolen her inheritance, hunted her across 3 states, used every weapon he had to destroy her. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated a mother's capacity to survive, to adapt, to fight back. And now Claire Morrison stood at the top of an empire she'd built herself, an empire based on ethics and transparency, an empire that protected mothers instead of exploiting them, an empire that would outlast David's fraud-built legacy by decades. She smiled at her sleeping children. They wanted us to disappear, she whispered. They wanted me to stay silent. They wanted me to choose between my life and yours. Instead, I chose all of us, and we built something beautiful. Claire closed the door softly and walked to her home office. Tomorrow, she had meetings about expanding the maternal health initiatives to 12 more states. Next week, she was testifying before Congress about strengthening laws around reproductive coercion. Next month, the 4 Heirs Foundation would open with enough funding to help thousands of women. The work wasn't finished, would never be finished, but it was work worth doing. She looked at the framed photo on her desk, her father in his lab coat, holding up a beaker like a toast. We did it, Dad, she whispered to the photo. Not just reclaimed what was ours, built something better, something that matters. Outside, the city lights shimmered like promises. Inside, 4 miracles slept peacefully. And in between, Claire Morrison, CEO and mother and survivor, smiled at the future she'd fought so hard to build. Some stories end with revenge. This one ended with revolution, because the most powerful thing a broken woman can do is refuse to stay broken, is to stand up, speak out, and change the system that tried to silence her. David Morrison tried to erase Claire. Instead, she became unforgettable. 4 heirs, one fight, and a legacy that would echo for generations.